today, I'd like to introduce you to Father Sam Ward, the Vocations Director for the Los Angeles Archdiocese, Co-Vocation Director, Sister Jen Zimmerman, a sister of Notre Dame, also in the Archdiocese of Los Angeles, and Sister Elizabeth Therese, here with the Carmelite Sisters, talking about her community and the like. So today we'll have a opportunity to both to receive a presentation and to open it up for some questions and answers later. So welcome, Father and sisters. We're glad you're here. Thank you.
My name is Sister Elizabeth Therese, and as you know, I'm Vocation Directress. I would also like to just introduce you to my assistant, Sister Mugretti, who is sitting here in the front row, because I know that one of the primary responsibilities of the Serran is to pray for vocations. So I'm going to ask for prayers for Sister Mugretti and two other sisters, Sister Gianna and Sister Teresa Margaret, who are preparing for final vows in July. So thank you. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with our community, so I thought I'd just give you a little brief information about us. Our mother Lucita came here from Mexico during the religious persecution, and she blended the contemplation of Carmel with the active apostolates. So our main mission is to promote the deeper spiritual life among God's people, and we do that through healthcare, education, and retreat work. Our mother house is here in Alhambra in the Southern California area near Pasadena, which is also where we have our Sacred Heart Retreat House. We have a daycare. We're in parochial schools as well as a high school. And then also we have health care, elder care, independent living, assisted living, and skilled nursing facilities. And really, to create a culture of vocation means to create a culture of encounter. And we do that through our, first of all, in our vocation office, through the witness to the joy and beauty of religious life in Carmel. We serve as the entry point for young women who are discerning with us, and we support the response to the Holy Spirit's action in hearts of those who are called. We find that it's really beautiful. I was reading a book called Unrepeatable, and when it talked about the culture, to create a culture of vocation is to create that culture of encounter. And it touched my heart in a special way because in Carmel, it's about encountering the living God. And so we do that in our own lives, and then we reach out to others. So of course, as Carmelites, our primary apostolate is prayer. So for vocations, we're also praying and sacrificing for vocations. We also, as a whole community, each of us are vocation promoters. So all of our Carmels, no matter what apostolate we're involved in, we look at how can we reach out and encourage vocations. And then, of course, communication and education. We know, and you'll hear, I think, even more so in the next talk that you hear from Generation Z, that so many of the young women first come to know us through looking us up on the internet. So it's really important for us to have a website that is attractive and things like that. But it's really in the personal one-to-one encounters that's going to really bring young women to our community. And we have the great gift of having houses in Colorado and Florida, Ohio and Arizona, and we have discernment retreats throughout the country. So we have one in Colorado, Florida, Ohio, Florida, Colorado, Ohio, Florida, and California. We have two. We just had one in December. But we also go to different conferences like the Focus Seek conference. And we also have things at home called Handmaidens, which is a faith formation group for young women. So we're constantly encouraging that encounter, first of all, with our Lord, for them to be able to hear the voice, and then accompany young women as they discern more fully.
Thank you, Sister Elizabeth Therese. My name is Father Sam Ward, Director of Vocations for the Archdiocese for the last 6 months and 5 years before that as Associate Director. You heard yesterday from my former partner and boss, Father Steve Daverin, who was a wonderful, wonderful brother to work with and now Father Mike Peruccia, who I think you met on Thursday, was here as well, my new associate director, and he was one of our regional vocation directors here in the Archdiocese for 5 years before that. I'm delighted to be in between a holy Carmelite and a holy Sister of Notre Dame, because both the Sisters of Notre Dame and the Carmelites have nourished my vocation since the very beginning, entering into the seminary. I'm actually a native son here of the Ventura County. I was born in the San Fernando Valley, but grew up on the LA County, Ventura County line in Oak Park and Agoura Hills, where the fires were back in November. Thanks be to God, my mom's house is still standing, which allowed me to sleep there last night and have a shorter commute today as well. So as a diocesan priest, I like to say that we are the general practitioners, whereas you could say probably the religious priests are more the specialists. So we need a general practitioner, our family doctor, to go just for the general ailments. And then if you have heart problems or feet problem, we find the specialist to go to. So I really am not an expert in anything, but hopefully I'm pretty competent in most things, because as a diocesan priest, being able to really walk with people from, I like to say, from womb to tomb. We're there from baptism to funeral and everywhere in between. And I've been vocation director for 5.5 years, but my first 10 years as a priest was as a parish priest, including 5 years as a pastor. In anything and everything that comes up in the lives of our people, we're able to be there in the good times and the bad. And hopefully, like Sister was saying, that encounter with Christ, being a mediator of God's grace, especially in and through the celebration of the sacraments, but all the different ways that we're able to interact with God's people. And so as a vocation director, it's a great joy to know, and when I entered the vocations office 5.5 years ago, I didn't know how many men would or wouldn't be calling regularly, but we get inquiries all the time, and I think the sisters know, the young people are at least very open to the possibility, and sometimes the possibility of a vocation, but they're open. Maybe not in the numbers like we had in the past, but it's really, really encouraging to see kids on a confirmation retreat. I go to we have almost 60 Catholic high schools here in the Archdiocese. Go to the Catholic high schools, the confirmation groups, and when the confirmation coordinator, the campus minister, comes up and says, you know, I've got 2 or 3 young men and women that are thinking about the priesthood or religious life, and they're, you know, juniors, seniors in high school. It's really, really encouraging. And I think that sense of solidarity, that they don't think they're that lone ranger, they're the only one thinking about maybe this crazy thought of priesthood or religious life, when they can realize that there are other young men and women, their own peers in high school, college age, young adult, that are thinking about a vocation. And that's why our discernment groups and come and see type retreats and all of those things, all of the different ways that we can, with our vocations events and vocations promote and really facilitate that encounter with each other, and then with good priests and religious and others that can be good models and mentors and spiritual fathers and mothers in their journey, no matter where they are. Whether they felt, and there's still a lot of young people that since 7, 8, 9 years old felt a call to the priesthood from a young age. There's still some of those young boys that play Mass as kids. I thought that was a relic from the past, and I hear the stories of these kids that are still 17, 18 years old, and they weren't just on their iPad as a little kid, playing all of their video games, that too probably. But they're also, again, that the Lord has nourished that vocation from a young age. And then others in high school, college, sometimes after a conversion or reversion to the faith, however the path of the life has gone, they're now starting to hear the very faint or sometimes very distinct call of the Lord, at least being open to that possibility. So there's great reason for hope with vocations. Sister Elizabeth Treese was just mentioning the Focus Seek Conference. Focus missionaries, if you may or may not know, it's a fellowship of Catholic university students. Sister Jennifer will talk in a few moments. She works at USC with, and there are 5 Focus missionaries, college graduates who dedicate at least 2 years as being missionaries on college campuses to their own peers. We were in Indianapolis just 2 weeks ago, 17,000 Catholic university students. We weren't in Daytona Beach. We weren't in Cancun. We were in Indianapolis in prayer and worship and fellowship, seeking that deeper encounter with Christ, and many of those young people at least open to, if not actively discerning, a vocation. So great reason for hope, even with all of the challenges out there.
Thank you, Father. As mentioned, my name is Sister Jennifer, Sister Jenny, Sister Jen. I get called a lot of things. I'm a sister of Notre Dame, and originally from our Toledo, Ohio province, but I've been out here in California going on 4 years. So just a little background. So Sisters of Notre Dame, we're an international community. We're about 2,200 sisters. I think we're in 19 countries now. We actually have about 200 women in formation, which is pretty amazing. Here in the U.S., of course, it's a slightly different story than some of our other provinces. But my road to this vocation ministry has been a little swervy, we'll call it. So I actually moved out here to California 3.5 years ago to work with a ministry called Christus Ministries. It's a Jesuit-run ministry. Christus works to bridge the gap between young adults and the church. So we were working in the parishes on really how to accept young adults in the parishes, and we were working with young adults on leadership skills needed in those parishes. So that's why I originally came out here, and then things changed. So within just a few months after being out here, I heard about an opening, Hilton Foundation, which is the largest supporter of women religious throughout the world, located just about a half hour from here. They had given a grant to University of Southern California and UCLA to bring sisters onto campus to see what the role of Catholic sisters on non-Catholic campuses could be. So I ended up shifting into that ministry. I was the director of a program that we call Vocations Alive, and I'm not gonna lie, we had no clue what we were doing. Basically, I mean, I'll be fully honest with that. They said, here's grant money, create a culture of discernment and a culture of vocation on campuses. We said, sure. So we really started with building relationships, talking to the students, finding out what they needed, and really breaking down some of those walls, the stereotypes that were out there about religious sisters, religious priests, diocesan priesthood. So through those interactions with the students, through building up relationships, we started, they asked for silent retreats. We started silent retreats. We asked for come and see days. We did that. Discernment retreats. We did that. Everything always boiled down to they just wanted someone to talk to. So all of those programs turned into a spiritual mentoring program. And we bring priests, sisters, brothers onto campus, also certified spiritual directors, to meet with the students. And we actually can't keep up. So I was full-time at USC. There's another sister full-time at UCLA. We went to the Hilton Foundation. We said, we can't keep up. They said, okay, hire more people. So we did. We hired 3 or 4 more sisters. It varied at times. We hired a full-time marketing person to get the word out through social media. Both sister and father have been very helpful and active in what we've tried to do on campus. So we've really been bringing religious onto campus, and it's not in recruitment. It's come and build relationships. And so that's what we've been doing. So now my little life has changed again. Excuse me, the grant, there's some question marks around it. The 3-year program ends this June. We're not sure where exactly it's gonna go from there. But I've been appointed as National Vocation Director for the Sisters of Notre Dame in the US. So I will be transitioning fewer hours at USC and ramping up with our community. So we have a vocations team. There's 5 of us, and we also, leadership, praise God, allowed us to hire a marketing person just for vocations. So we've all been working together as a team. My role is to really coordinate the effort. So we're about 600 sisters here in the US. I think it's 16 states. And so my role is to coordinate the efforts of all 600 sisters. And we're really through, again, praise God, our leadership, they've approved a new model of young adult ministry. And so we're going to be really trying to recreate what was so successful, has been successful at USC in a religious community. So our sisters, they're so excited to be doing this outreach in a mentoring capacity. And I mean, all the data, all the studies, and everything we've done on the campuses have shown that leads to vocations. So building those relationships, walking with that culture of encounter, and just meeting the young adult where they are leads to happy, healthy, holy priests, sisters, married people, single people in the church. So that's what our goal is. And at USC, again, we're just making it up when we started. And I thought maybe if we'd have 3 or 4 people talking to us about religious life, that would be successful. We're at 150 some in the mentoring program, and probably 75 of those asking questions about religious life and priesthood. One woman's already entered the Salesian community, one's discerning young man with Jesuits, and several others are in various levels of discernment with various communities. So we know it works. So now we're trying to translate that into religious communities. So please pray for us.
So my niece is a freshman at USC. Hopefully she'll be entering maybe with one of these orders. And I have Mass there tomorrow night at 9 p.m. So again, it's just a great, great joy. Something Sister Jenny said is very true. I do a lot of direct, overt vocation promotion, but a lot of it is indirect as well. So I go to parishes and high schools, Catholic high schools, especially youth groups, and give vocation talks. But one of the luxuries of myself and Father Mike being able to be full-time, I'll go wherever they will have me to speak. So certainly the Serrans who are already, you're on our team, and I'm speaking to converted, correct? But yes, good. We're going to have to convince anyone here. But just being able to go and be present. I'm at USC and UCA Long Beach State at their Catholic Newman clubs regularly. Just being able to be present, that they see a priest regularly. Going to just helping out at a confirmation. If any campus minister or youth minister that I meet, I always give them my card. I said, call me. If you need help with confessions, if I can, I'll be there. If you just need help with Mass and present. But again, fostering those relationships, especially with these lay leaders and the other religious and priests at those parishes in those communities, because they're going to feel that much more confident when they have a young person that comes to them after confirmation retreat and says, you know what, I think God's calling me maybe to be a priest. And if they've met me and they've seen me in the retreat and the remember Father Sam when he was here 3 months ago? And maybe they go to a Catholic high school as well, and they've seen me at their high school. Then they see me at the Religious Ed Congress at Youth Day, and on and on and on, really building those relationships. And 2 and 3, 4 years later, forgetting that I had ever been there, I get that call and say, I remember when you were there. Next month I'm going to be at UC Riverside over President's Weekend. All of the UC Newman clubs have an annual conference, and there'll be about 300 or so Catholic university students from these secular campuses, from these UC campuses, and it happened last year. One of the guys whom I just randomly called up the UC, they call it the UCCC. I called up the people 4 years ago. They were going to have the conference at the University of San Diego, and they rotate between Northern and Southern California each year. And I found out about the conference. I went to UC Irvine. My vocation was nourished at the Newman Club at UCI. And I just called up and said, I'm coming. I'm just going to help with Mass and confessions and just be there. 3 years later, a young man calls me and says, Father Sam, do you remember we met at UCCC 3 years ago? I said, not really. But yes, I do remember, of course. And he said, I'm now discerning. And he was discerning with the Dominicans. He actually entered this fall with the Dominicans. I thought we had about an 80% chance the Dominicans, convince him, which is great, because the vocation is God's vocation. It's not for us. But again, planting those seeds, establishing those relationships that might take years, as God is just kind of allowing the growth to take place. Just being present to those things and allowing you to know the good work that we're doing. So Vianney Vocations being able to be here, which produce so many of the best vocations materials and books and pamphlets that we have. The Focus Seek Conference. I go to the high schools. I know that 99%, if not 100% of the young people aren't right now probably considering a vocation. But I talk to them about opportunities after high school or college graduation. 2 years as a focused missionary. Net Ministries, which are the national evangelization teams for high school ministry. Teams of 12, 6 guys and 6 girls. They essentially travel in a van and go from high schools and youth groups, evangelizing youth. That you can give a year or two of your life, kind of like with the Peace Corps or something like that, and then still have your career. But a lot of vocations then that get nourished from those ministry opportunities as well. So allowing our young people to know that there's fun and exciting and engaging and really beautiful ministry going on, whether they are called to consecrated life and priesthood or not. A lot of them maybe end up at least discerning, if not entering religious life or the seminary as well. So again, that culture of encounter, those opportunities, just building relationships. Directly, yes, I'll talk to you about vocations as directly and as intentionally as you need, but also just being present as well.
Yes, and another thing, we've also been a beneficiary of the Hilton Foundation as well. In 2014, we started a summer program because we find that this generation really loves to volunteer, and it's often during that time that they're discerning more fully, what is God calling me to? So we have a 2-week summer program every summer. We started in 2014, and it's a beautiful opportunity for young women to, some come almost as a come and see, but some really just want to volunteer. But it's been very fruitful, not only for our community, but for young women that are just actually just being open to religious life and have gone on to other communities as well. So, and we even have opportunities during the summer when we have Sisters 8-day retreats and weekend retreats, and we have a Thomas Aquinas College. Our postulant was one of the group of young women who'd come on a van from Thomas Aquinas College to volunteer for the weekend because her friend was discerning religious life and wanted to know more. And of course, she never entered, but her friend did. So, as it often happens. So, but I think now you might want to have some time for questions and answers.
Do you have a relationship with the Focus people?
Very much. We have 5 Focus missionaries at USC, and there are 4 Focus missionaries, actually 5 now, at UCLA that we work very closely with. The Focus program, they do amazing work of evangelization on campus, and we actually look at our role as walking with the Focus missionaries themselves. They often don't have the support that they're necessarily looking for, so we're providing spiritual directors and everything for them. But also spending time with the missionaries, because they're the ones really on the front lines. They're getting to places on campus that we can't get to. And once they know what we're about and that we're not out there, one of our sisters called body snatchers, you know, like we're not, like, do you want to be a sister before I even tell them my name? So once the missionaries know what we're about and that we're really here to just walk with, and that whatever vocation God is calling that person to, we want to help them activate it fully. So the missionaries are our first lines. They're bringing students to us constantly. They're recommending, please go talk to Sister Jenny. Please go talk to any of the priests that we have on campus. So Focus it's a beautiful program. They do great work. Thank you.
Yes, please. What type of opposition do you receive from college and university, the front office, and also from hostile student groups, Antifa-type groups? How do you get around that, and do you face opposition from them trying to do things on campus?
Yes. That's the simple answer. I have to say, we're very blessed at USC. There's 50,000 students at USC and 10,000 Catholics. So we have a giant Catholic center. We're located just a block north of campus. So technically we're not on the campus, which helps us. But the University of Southern California is considered one of the most religiously tolerant and diverse campuses in the world. There's over 160 countries represented and 80 world religions represented. So it really is a very tolerant environment, but we do receive opposition. When we're on campus, there's folks that you can just tell they're trying to trip us up, in whatever way they can. So we're mindful of that, but for the most part, very accepting, very, very tolerant campus.
I'll give one other perspective. I help out with the Cal State Long Beach Catholic Newman Club as well, which only just has club status. They don't have their own center. They don't have a full-time priest. They don't have any staff. It's student-run. They have a faculty advisor because that's one of the requirements to be club status, and they can use campus facilities. But they have pro-life events on campus. They'll have rosaries and things like that. You know, when they have the pro-life event, obviously they got a lot of opposition and people shouting them down and all of those things. This will be the 5th year. They have really their main day, and I love it every year. I spend all of Ash Wednesday there. And they have a noon mass and a 5:30. I went there for the first time 5 years ago, so I had met the leaders at a young adult conference. And I found out that they didn't have a priest that was helping regularly. The priest who had been helping was now in Nazareth House and was elderly and wasn't able to come and everything. But they were still persevering the best they could. I gave them my card. I said, if you ever need anything, give me a call. About 6 weeks later, they called me up, Father Sam, we need a priest for our retreat up in Big Bear. Can you go? I had the evening free on Saturday. I said, absolutely. And that started a relationship. The first year I went and celebrated the noon mass and the 5:30. I had 4.5 hours in between, and I said, I'm not going to battle traffic to go back to the office in LA and come back. So I hung out with the students for a couple hours, and then after that, as we evaluated, I said, you know what? In between, we've got those 4.5 hours. I said, we're going to have adoration, and we're going to have confessions. And so I hear 4.5 hours of confessions, and usually another hour after the 5:30 Mass. And it's just so beautiful. It's in the student union, in their ballroom, and students in between will come for ashes or just adoration and confession. And I remember overhearing in the little break I took during confessions, I usually have no break during that 4.5 hours, and I overhear one of the students saying to one of the student leaders as she was signing up, she said, this is my favorite day of the year. She said, we have adoration and confessions on campus. It's only one day a year. USC has, daily mass. UCLA has daily mass, and they have all of the functions of 2 full-time priests and all of those things. So they do get some opposition. It's a commuter school, so it's a little more challenging because they don't have, as intentional a community there all day. But even these small groups of students are just taking the lead, and they're just so happy when priests or religious can come. I mean, it's been a tough year for the church, tough last 6 months, obviously, with everything going on. Sister and I, if you could have seen the enthusiasm and the love and the joy of those 17,000 students in Indianapolis 2 weeks ago. Father, thank you for your vocation. Sister, we love you, cheering for us as we walk through. I mean, this is amazing. You would think they would be, no, we can do all this without the priest. We don't need them anymore. Absolutely not. They have a hunger and thirst for Christ in the Eucharist and in confession. They want and need their priests. But they want us to be holy. They want us to be authentic. They want us to be real. But they also realize that a couple bad apples don't spoil the whole bunch.
I had a question. It was regarding future vocations. Sister Jennifer, Father Sam, and Sister Teresita. I think had the cooperation amongst the different kinds of dynamics of promoting vocations is incredibly important, and I've seen that played out in, say, a Life Awareness Weekend, where you have a whole collection of people coming who are generally interested in discernment, but they really don't know about the particulars, and you have different representatives from different orders there, and they can kind of one-stop shop kind of a thing experience. I guess my question is, how does that play out in how you are doing, and how that you feel that that's really important in terms of how it relates to other religious orders that maybe don't have the opportunity to be as visible or have as much opportunity to be out there with the younger people?
Well, I think, Father, just to go back to something that Father said earlier, is so important for us to be at different places where they are at. So whether it's the Focus Seek Conference or the university campus, or, for instance, the past 2 years, we've been at new staff training for Focus. And the last year, we were during the Spirituality Week, which goes along with our charism. So and we're at Religious Ed Conference, where our sisters are at One Life LA right now. So the more we can be visible, the more we're a reminder and we're out there. We found that young women and men would come to our booth at Seek, and over, how did you know? Help us, how do you know, and what do you need to do to discern? Questions like that, and how do you pray about your vocation? Over and over and over. So just being out there, that's how we first are kind of a reminder. But then it's that encounter that's that builds a relationship. We have a group of young women that come monthly to our handmaidens group that was brought up by UC Irvine, UCI Focus missionaries, and now they come on their own because that's something that they want to continue. So it's just that building that relationship, but the more we can be visible is.
Just to add to that, at the University of Southern California, through this Hilton grant, we didn't know what the students were going to want to talk about. And after the first year, we've started interviewing them at the end of each year. And it's really boiled down to three things. They want to talk about, how do I pray? They want to talk about, how do I make decisions? And then those that do want to ask questions about priesthood and religious life. But I heard in a podcast not too long ago that, we hear often that we have a vocation crisis. And the speaker was saying, we don't have a vocation crisis, we have a prayer crisis. Our young people don't know how to pray. No one's taught them. So how do we expect them to hear a call from God if they don't know what God's voice sounds like for them? So we talk a lot with our students about, what's God's language for you? What does God sound like to you? What is prayer? Because once that happens, then they can start a decision-making and discernment process. I'm not there to find Sisters of Notre Dame. I'm there to find holy people and to help them to realize what God is calling them to. If they're called to diocesan priesthood, wonderful. I'm going to send them to Father Sam. If they're called to, they want to discern the Carmelite spirituality, I'm going to send them to Sister Elizabeth Treese. So we build relationships as religious, and we can send them. It's not a competition. We want them to be where God's calling them to be.
My question is for Sister Therese or Sister Elizabeth. Do you find that your habit is a positive or a negative on college campuses and just in our culture generally?
My personal experience, and I think Sister would say the same thing, I've always received positive feedback about wearing the habit. So, and it's always been very, I think it's especially important for our community because our mother founders came from a religious persecution where the sisters were not able to wear the habit until they came to fled to the United States for refuge. So it's something that we've always, but also in the habit for myself is a reminder of who I am called to be and who I am called as spouse of Christ. But I do know that I like the saying too that the habit does not make the sister makes the habit. So it's important both ways.
This is my first Serra Rally, and we're from South Texas. But my question is for all three of you is that do you all have any type of social media platform, to evangelize or, awareness?
Sure. I think Sister mentioned earlier that, yes, the one-on-one encounter, but most of the young girls and the guys, they're looking for us on YouTube and on websites and things, especially if they're outside of the area. I like to always say I'm the MTV generation, I'm not the social media generation. So, I was a young kid when cable was starting in MTV and all of those things. Exactly. And I never even had a pager back then, so I was always behind even my peers back in those days. My mom wanted me to get a cell phone before I ever wanted to. I was living in South LA, and she says, "I'm scared with the gangs for you and everything." I said, "Okay, I'll get a phone." I don't have any personal social media, but we do have accounts with the Vocations office, and we have a wonderful digital media team at the Archdiocese that the Archbishop Gomez brought in about a month after I began in the Vocations office. So I had this whole team handed into my lap, and their first priorities, they work with all the departments in the Archdiocese now, but their first mandate was the Archbishop's page, Vocations, and I forget what the other one was. So they do all of our posting, they look for all of our content, but we've got graphic designers, videographers, and all of those things. They produce our ordination mass video highlights, every year. So all that stuff is done in-house now. So we don't have to farm that out. We don't have to pay extra or anything. So yes, but indirectly. I tell my nieces and nephews all the time, I post every day. And I've only posted once in my life to Twitter myself, yet I'm posting every day because I got people doing the work that I don't know how to do.
And we do have pretty much every social media platform out there, both as a community and then also our vocations team. So again, we have our marketing folks that take care of that for the most part for us. But most of our sisters do also have personal, especially Facebook pages, and it's a wonderful way to evangelize and just a way to let people see into our daily lives that we're regular people.
I just want to share this because we have a similar program in Toronto. It's called it the Catholic Christian Outreach. And they're working at Ryerson University. And this Filipino guy was born into a Catholic, very strong Catholic Filipino family, going to church and doing all things. But he does not understand the faith. So he went to university and he left the church. It was through the CCO that we found it again. And how positive it is. He is now first year at St. Augustine Seminary.
I think just to comment briefly, there are so many programs across our colleges and universities. My current question is, what happens after? Because, if you look at the data, you look at the studies, men and women are entering communities later. They're entering the seminaries later. A lot of that has to do with student loans, et cetera, et cetera. So now we're working on the next issue. I think our college campuses, good things are happening there, and it's building. But what happens when they leave?
So Sarah has initiated a collaboration with Ireland and their Vocations Executive Director for Religious Life, Margaret Cartwright. And they got a focus group a year ago for the very first time. And in Ireland right now, youth cannot speak out about their faith. And Margaret Cartwright told us, and we ought to be proud because we helped fund their focus mission for this year through the Sarah Foundation. But Margaret said, for the first time, the youth are able to talk about their faith because they see the focus missionaries speaking about their faith in public. And it's just a beautiful thing that the focus group is doing over there. So I agree. I think it's an amazing, and we just got it on campus in Rice University in Houston. And Rice is a very secular university, and it's exploding there now. So thank you for all the work you do with Focus.
I had two questions very briefly. It sounds like the three of you are working primarily on college campuses. And I'm wondering if you're also reaching out to people who are looking at secondary vocations, people who have worked in the workplace for a while. I know one of our priests was an engineer at NASA for some time before he entered the seminary. Father Steve the other day was a police officer. Do you reach out for people who are looking at us at a later in life vocation? And my other question, this is primarily for Father Sam, I believe. As a deacon, I'm always concerned about how deacons get left out of the whole vocations picture a lot. Do you also deal with the deacon formation, people who are interested in becoming a deacon? Permanent deacon.
Yeah, I'm not directly involved in the formation, but Deacon Brian Conroy, who is the director of diaconate formation, who is actually deacon at Father Steve's parish, where he is now pastor at St. Mel's in Woodland Hills, added myself and a couple others to after their first year of candidacy for the men in formation, added us onto their evaluation team, just to bringing our knowledge and expertise and experience in assessing and evaluating candidates as well. So in that early stages of formation, now we're working more directly. We do several events together where we bring deacons and lay leaders together. We work with El Sembrador, which is the Spanish Catholic station. We just had a Congreso Vocacional, a Vocations Congress in November, And again, look, because we realize that all aspects of vocation are on the horizon for these men and women, younger and certainly, you know, a little older and everything. So yes, we tried. I am conscious of the fact that sometimes we do leave the deacons out a little more, sometimes even intentionally in our vocabulary when we speak, but we try to work together as best we can. For those older possible vocations, finding where they are and what groups they're a part of. So if they're, you know, we work with the Sarans and Knights in Columbus, and some of those men are knights and everything. If I find out where they congregate and who they associate with, we would invite them or go to them with things. Sometimes it's hard to find. They're part of parish ministries, but maybe not a wider network of their peers. So if they're, as much as we can, yes. But yes, we have a lot of 30 and 40-year-olds and sometimes a little older, and got a call from a 61-year-old lawyer in D.C. who just sold his, dentist, just sold his dental practice, was with the Jesuits for 10 years in his 30s. And, you know, we'll have to see. But
last question, Chuck.
If it's all right, if I
me.
just wanted to say that we do reach out to young women 18 to 35. So we are on college campuses, but we do visit with young adult groups as well, and it might be young adults groups of men and women. But again, one of the reasons I think for the outreach to the universities is because we find that it takes sometimes about 3 years from the time the young woman feels like she's called to the time that she actually makes the decision to enter. So if we can continue that, how can we continue that relationship through her college and maybe even after college? So as vocation directors, I have monthly calls that I have with young women who are in college or even out of college now working, to have that continued relationship. And also just another thing about Focus, for their Student Leadership Summit, it's not only their students that are in leadership, but they're also reaching out a lot to lifelong mission and parishes. So they're seeing that their model is great in colleges, but how can we reach out to parishes as well? So when you go to conferences like that, or even when we go to youth conferences, there's young adults who are leading these youth, who again are going to be open to religious life. So
And I do a lot, probably more than university with high school age, but we also, and Sister Elizabeth Therese and her predecessor, Sister Faustina, brought me a program some of you have heard of, Focus 11, because CARA research data says that 6th graders and 11th graders, 11th grade and 11 years old, are the ages when kids are really open to the possibility of vocation. So we've done a couple events, and we hopefully will start again with our middle school students and younger as well, because we have to plant those seeds early. Whether they actually call us when they're 30, if we haven't planted the seed of the possibility from TK or before. So I always say, I'll go talk to the TK class if you need. I'm not going to focus all my energy there, but, you know, so they know that Father exists. I'll be there. If I've got the time, we'll do it. Do we have time for one last question, or one more? Okay. Oh, I think we have the microphone back there. Sorry.
Two observations. Number one, I just want, when you mentioned the Knights of Columbus, Father, I have a prayer every day, and it came to me only about 2 or 3 years ago. As we get older and more mature, and we respect and think back to the people that did things for us that we may not have paid attention to. But the prayer is, I thank my mom and dad, the priests and nuns, the Catholic daughters, and the Knights of Columbus that did so much in Waseca, Minnesota, to anchor us in our faith. With that, I obviously have a great love and appreciation for our nuns and sisters. For example, in Hawaii, I'm one of the there's 2 lay people on the LARC Vocations Committee, Leadership Association of Religious Communities. And the thing I notice is that many of our communities, of which we have over a dozen in Hawaii, are reluctant to have any one of their sisters or brothers step forward to act as vocation director. And that is kind of like the kiss of death for an organization. And I know the Dominicans in Nashville are probably the fastest growing religious community in the country, I think, because they're out there and doing it. I just wonder if you have any observations or suggestions that we can get communities to be more willing to step forward to act as a vocations director, even if it's an assistant, because you might have a
Are you talking about
national one.
lay or lay members of organizations or actual priests and religious to do that? I'm sorry.
Well, no, this is within their communities, have them step forward within the religious or brother communities.
The thought that comes to mind is what we're trying to do in my community is to change the terminology, that it's not about recruitment and it's about walking with. And when we've approached our sisters with that in mind, 100% of them are on board. When it's approached as, do you want to help with vocations? No. I don't know what to say. What would I do? I don't want to seem pushy. I don't want to, but when we talk mentorship and walking with, and that this whole process that we're trying to start is going to allow our vocation directors to do what they're actually trained for. Once we have our larger membership walking with, there will be people, I guarantee, there will be people that come forward that are looking at priesthood and religious life, and then we can direct them to the people that are trained in that. For me, it's a changing of terminology. You're welcome.
Okay. Father Sam, Sister Elizabeth Therese, Sister Jen, I want to thank you for being here today. We could take either all three of you and just split you up and just have it like a day conference with you and just sit down and have coffee for you all day long. So thanks for them. I want to say one more thing, is that you said, you mentioned that you're preaching to the choir. So I want to tell you, this choir is ready to do more for you. Okay? So keep asking. We're ready to help you out. All right? Thank you. All right, thanks everybody. Let's take a break, 10 minutes. We'll be back here. And then Ed Lupton's selling CDs, but today he's giving them away free. So this is from Sister. This is your community, sister?
I just thought some of you might be interested if you don't have a copy at your parish. It's for Love Alone. It's a DVD looking at the beauty of religious life. It's really a response. If you've seen the DVD of Fishers of Men, which is wonderful for priests, we realized there wasn't anything out there to promote the beauty of religious life. It's about 18 minutes. It shows a lot of different communities represented. It shows families, interviews families, it introduces the residents of those who are served, tells the vocation stories of sisters. So if it's something that you're interested in, I brought 10 copies, so I gave them to Ed to give to whoever.